Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and it is the Season 6 premiere. Year 6 of this show. I said that I felt like a super senior last year. Now I feel like one of those rare 6th years that's still around, and I'm fine with that. Because the 2025 softball season is here. It's opening day for the show, but it's also opening day for D1 college softball. So we made it to first pitch. And however you got here today, whether you downloaded the audio version on Apple, Spotify, etc., or you're watching on YouTube, thank you and welcome back. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods. So you can follow us on Instagram and X at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And there's still merch, people. Click the link in our bio on either page or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase 3 different types of shirts covering our bases. Safer out and catch you soon. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we'll be covering our bases. I'll share some call-outs. Then we'll head into today's interview with Larissa Anderson, a longstanding pillar in the college softball and coaching community. So thrilled to have her as our leadoff this year. And then we're going to bring it home and wrap up with some final thoughts. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. The biggest betting weekend of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Sunday. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. We have hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game live betting. BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline offers you everything and more to enhance your game day experience. Visit the website today and make game day action count just a little bit more. BetOnline, the game starts here. And this week might be the Super Bowl here in the US, but our Super Bowl truly is the start of softball in 2025. So let's just go through what we're expecting this year. For college softball, there are 4 teams consistently in the top 5 across all the different D1 polls. Even if the order differs, you got Texas, Florida, OU, Oklahoma State. After that, UCLA, Tennessee, and Duke have been pretty consistently in the top 8, and then you got Texas A&M and Florida State, among others, jockeying to make it in that top 8. But we all know that what matters is who gets there in the end. ESPN once again broadcasting over 3,200 games this season. Just how lucky are we that we have that resource? And a big storyline, of course, the first year of the major conference realignment. So the Pac-12 has disbanded, and they sent Stanford and Cal to the ACC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon to the Big Ten, and Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah to the Big 12. Of course, Texas and Oklahoma also make the big move to the SEC. Lots of changes, lots of shakeups. And some impact transfers. Too many to list them all, but a couple to keep an eye on. Of course, the reigning USA Softball National Player of the Year, Nigel Kennedy, going from Stanford to Texas Tech. And then Ruby Malin as well, going from Washington to Oklahoma State. So some high impact transfers in the circle, just to name a couple examples. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of these under the radar teams also break through, because that's one of the most exciting parts of every season. Speaking of, this is my 2nd season working with D1 softball. We actually kicked off the D1 softball podcast this week. I'm back with Amanda Lorenz for the season. I'm also leading the digital content team, so I'll be at different events like Clearwater and Mary Nutter in the preseason, the ACC tournament, the Women's College World Series, of course, just to name a few. So I'm excited to grow and expand our efforts this year. And then, of course, after that, there's summer ball. Can't forget about it. The American Collegiate League umbrella has some more stuff on tap this summer. It was fun being a part of the inaugural year in the Golden Bay Collegiate League in SoCal, and they're going to keep rolling with those opportunities across the country. Meanwhile, travel ball, of course, big time in the summer, led by the PGF and Alliance Fast Pitch Championships that feature top college recruits in the country. The pro softball scene, extremely exciting. The inaugural season of the Athletes Unlimited Softball League, AUSL. First ever draft happened for 4 teams in the traditional format of a location-based league. They'll be roaming around on tour in the first year, but the next year they'll settle down into their cities. The Bandits, Blaze, Talons, and Volts. 14 Bleavers were drafted out of the 48, and half the leadership teams for both teams as well have been on the show. GMs Dana Sorensen, Lisa Fernandez, Kat Osterman, and of course head coach Stacey Newman of the Bandits. And, we might add to that this year. We'll see. Stay tuned. The individual point system isn't going away. It's now just going to be the AUSL All-Star Cup after the regular season. So look forward to that. And then, of course, other pro teams you can follow like the OKC Spark, Texas Smoke, Florida Vibe, and more. Internationally, obviously, we're gearing up for the Olympic return again in LA 2028. Patty Gasso recently named the head coach of the women's national team. Incredibly exciting, well-deserved. And then really overseas, Japan's JD League recently announced its schedule too for their pro scene. Over 230 games just in the regular season, by the way. So they start in April, they'll take a break in the middle of the season, and they finish up in the fall. So keep an eye on that because we're just scratching the surface. This is the first episode of 2025. We're going to get into all of it this season. Of course, for opening weekend, I will be doing some broadcasts at Stanford in the football stadium, which is super exciting. I'm going to be on ACC Network Extra through ESPN. So if you use your ESPN account, you can find it on ESPN Plus, but I Bleav you need a cable package with the ACC to access it through your TV provider. So if you tune in, it's just another way to support women's sports. Someone who's also all about that is today's guest. Let's head into the interview. She is the Missouri head coach, president of the NFCA, multi-time member of the regional coaching staff of the year, and Gannon University alum, Larissa Anderson. Coach, thank you for joining. Like I said, I'm very, very excited about this.
I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to a great 2025 season, that's for sure.
Yes, so much coming up, which is really, really exciting. But I was also excited because I got to meet you very briefly in person at the NFCA convention. Because I feel like I get to chat with a lot of people in this forum, but it was really nice to actually get to see you in person before we did this.
No, the convention was great. I thought it was one of the best I've ever been to, and there's been quite a few. Obviously a ton of people, but in terms of the exhibitors, great topics, great discussion. I can just see the forward thinking that's happening within our sport, and it was great to be able to carry that momentum into the season.
I think I saw too that it was a record number of coaches that attended, like over 1,800 coaches. Is that right?
I Bleav so. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I think in the last 3 years, we've broken it every single year moving forward, which is just exciting. It's exciting for the sport. It all starts at the grassroots level and getting a lot of youth and travel ball and high school coaches to be able to attend. And that's really where we're growing a lot within our sport. And, you have the consistency at the Division I level and all throughout every level of collegiate softball, but it's really making sure that everyone who works with softball at the grassroots level understands the opportunities and the resources that they have.
Yeah, and I was only there from a media perspective, but it was my first convention, and I did feel that because I know that we talk a lot about player development, of course, as we should, but we don't always talk about coaching development as much. But obviously with your involvement with the NFCA, not only involved, but leading it, it's important to you. So why is that aspect so crucial?
I mean, if we don't have anyone teaching the game at the grassroots level, we don't have players that can even play for us. So it's like their job and their responsibility is far greater than mine. We need the people who, when you have a youth player who's in second grade, fourth grade, sixth grade, deciding on what sport that she's falling in love with, we want them to choose softball. We don't want them to choose lacrosse and soccer and tennis and, all the other opportunities that they have. We want them to choose softball. And it really comes from the grassroots level and the youth level. And, I think back to some of my first coaches, like they helped me fall in love with the game. And that's the influence that a lot of these younger coaches can have on young females and young girls when they are choosing their sport. And then the more they can develop and the more we can develop their skills at a younger age, the more opportunities they're going to have throughout their high school and collegiate career.
Yeah, it's very true because I'm very supportive of girls in sports, period. But of course, we have a little bit of bias, right? That we want it to be our sport above all others.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, we want softball to be the premier and, everyone to center around softball, no matter what level you're coaching at. But, again, like the game just teaches so much. And we just want to be able to provide, these girls and young females out an opportunity to be able to play at any level that they want and for as long as they want.
Yeah, that's very true. And you're so right about the growth at the grassroots level. Like that's where it really happens. But then also seeing just coaches from all different parts of the spectrum, meaning like super seasoned like yourself, or I knew some assistant coaches who are just getting started in their coaching career. who are attending and really excited about some of the mentoring sessions and other things. And it makes me think of your time at Hofstra, like the 17 years that you spent there, going from assistant to associate head coach to head coach, and then obviously, of course, now at Mizzou. And that's the kind of career growth that a lot of people aspire to, but not everyone stays for that long. So I feel like you're in a unique position as well.
I had a really good situation, and there wasn't a reason for me to leave. I mean, one, I'm working for a Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
so I'm getting the mentoring and the development. We were very successful, so I'm getting the experience of winning and being a mid-major program that was competing in the top 25 of all Division I softball. Like that to me inspired me on becoming a go-getter and knowing that a Hofstra, a mid-major school in the Northeast, doesn't have the same resources that I have here now at Mizzou, but being able to outcoach people and develop that talent and grow the players to be able to compete on the same field, to me fulfilled a lot of needs that I personally had as a coach, and my desire to develop players, but also to represent the entire Northeast and the mid-major schools all around the country, that you can do it and you can compete at that level. You just have to know who you're recruiting and what you need to do in order to be successful. So when opportunities came across my way in the 17 years I was at Hofstra, it was balancing on what more can they provide me that I'm not already getting here at Hofstra. And Hofstra was giving me so much in everything that I just explained, that there wasn't a reason for me to go anywhere else, because it was meeting all my needs and, building my resume in that experience, in that environment.
I feel like we could take some lessons from Hofstra in terms of retention too with coaches, just from hearing you speak about it.
And we call it we have a little Hofstra. I guess it is like it's a Hofstra cult, and and the players that played in that program, because of such the rich tradition and history. I mean, Bill Edwards is there for 25 years. I was there for 17, so you have a lot of ownership and alumni base and pride within that program, because of the traditions are instilled year after year after year, because of the longevity. So in developing the players, we have a lot of alumni that are now coaching collegiately and even to the high school and travel ball level. And we still are very tight, and we communicate, and we know what works, and we know what it takes to be successful. So the communication that we still have with a lot of those players is all the time. Like when we go to the national convention, the NFCA convention, we still to get together. Like that alumni base, if you graduated from Hofstra, or if you played for Bill, or you played for myself, and that even carries over into Mizzou. Like it's all the same, and it's the same people with the same values and the same work ethic.
Mm, that's a really, really good point. And I think I saw people talking recently on social media about how, of course, people graduate every year, coaches cycle through, but tradition never graduates, or
No.
tradition never changes, right? And this seems like a really good example of that. If anything, it just grows, right? Like you said, it's even bled over into your Mizzou path.
And it doesn't matter if you graduated from Hofstra in 1992 or 2002 or 2012. Um, you experience the same things. You just experience them at different times. So you have a commonality in what it stood for to be a Hofstra softball player and now a Mizzou softball player, and you speak the same language and you experience the same things. And they just might have been with different people. So when you get all those people together, in the same environment, in the same room, there's commonality and there's respect for one another, because like my players right now in the 2025 season, I talk about the past players and I talk about what they did and the championship years they put up on the wall, and even the players I didn't coach that graduated here from Mizzou, like a Chelsea Thomas and a Rhea Taylor. It's learning from them on what it was like to be a Mizzou softball player and then upholding their legacy. So that's where it gets passed down, and you start to respect the players that came through the program and the years that they played here. So when you step foot on the field, you're making sure that you respect them in the past and you leave your own legacy for the future years to be able to resemble and emulate as well.
Mm. Do you think that you would have been able to do that at the level you are as a power coach, power conference coach, had you not had an experience like Hofstra?
I don't know if I would have been living it. Like I think I knew it.
Mm.
Um but I experienced it and I lived it and I knew it worked. Like that's the big thing. So when I speak about something, I can speak about it with tremendous passion, because I believe in it and I saw it work. So it was taking that same philosophy that we had at Hofstra and now putting it in the SEC and just finding the right players that Bleav in that, because it's not for everybody. And I don't want it to be for everybody, because if it was for everybody, then it's not special. So that's like something that we Bleav in here is, this is what we're going to do. And especially in today's day and age with the portal and NIL, and, there's a lot of individuality and there's a lot of, selfishness where they're just looking like what's best for me rather than what's best for the program, and finding the right players that buy into that. Now, all of a sudden, they're playing for a bigger purpose than just for themselves. And that to me is the lifetime lessons that we're trying to teach here. You when you go out into the real world and you're working for a company, you're representing that company the same way you're representing this program, and finding those people that's what they want. Now they Bleav, and we don't lose players to the transfer portal because of some of those reasons that other players are leaving.
So many things you touched on that I want to follow up on. But you mentioned even too the post softball careers. If you're working for a company, I think it was you, right, that had the slide up at the NFCA convention about the percentage of leaders at companies that were athletes in terms of women actually in those fields and in those
I
roles.
Bleav the stat was 90% of female CEOs were athletes, and it's what athletics teaches. I mean, I'm picking up a ground ball is easy. It's the competitiveness, it's the self-discipline, it's the self-motivation, it's the structure, it's being able to work together as a team. That's what athletics teaches you, and that's what you need in order to be successful in the real world when you're going out. And the CEOs, the female CEOs, learn those lifetime lessons through athletics, which made them very successful CEOs in the corporate world.
Yeah, it's very true. I've experienced that even, outside of the sort of softball media path I've taken, being in tech after having left Stanford, being in Silicon Valley, that's kind of the industry that's in the area, and definitely saw that in play in a different field, literally and figuratively. So I really appreciated that you brought that up in that type of forum.
Yeah, and what's really special is that when I have players graduate from my programs and they go out into the real world, in the corporate world, and they have their first board meeting. And I remember one call in particular that a young lady worked for KPMG, huge marketing firm, accounting firm, and she called me up after her first board meeting, and she's like, I could pick out the athletes immediately. And we were given a project, and there's 24 people in the room, and immediately the athletes flocked to one another, and she could pick them out just in a meeting because they knew how to work well together.
Yeah.
And it's those types of things that make me extremely proud that they learned that through our sport, that they were able to carry on to be much more successful after they graduated.
Yes. Because you talk about passion too. And I see that a lot when I watch you coach. That's one of the first words that pops in my head. I think I even saw recently that I didn't realize before, but it's in your Twitter bio. Like, you can't fake passion, right? And I think you're the perfect example of that. But this is a passion that kind of, again, it's not just between the lines, right? Like, this extends much further than that for the whole experience, for all the relationships, much beyond just the 4 years that a student athlete might be at a university.
And I appreciate you saying that, because you can't fake passion. And people can say the same thing that I'm saying, but if it's not coming from their heart and their side and inside them and their Bleav system, your athletes and kids, I say all the time, you can't fool kids. Like, they're going to know. They're going to know if it's fake. They're going to know if it's a facade. And I want my players to know how passionate I am about them and their growth and their work ethic and their drive and their determination, which then carries over to being a good softball player. Again, like, softball stuff's easy. It's all the other stuff that we're trying to teach them along the way. I always want my players, when they graduate, I say, just be a go-getter. Like, go after whatever it is you want, and I will support you 100%. And if we have a roadblock, let's find a way to get around that wall or get through that wall, but to never ever accept no as an answer without a why. So let's figure out what that why is and what we need to do in order to be successful. So it's just be a go-getter, like, go after what it is you want. One of my other strong passions is I want our young females to know that they can do like, they can have it all. They can be a successful mom and a successful entrepreneur. Like, you don't have to choose, but you have to figure out what is your balance and what you need to be happy with yourself and comfortable with yourself. It's funny that people will say, like, what is my balance? And in my head, when I was a young coach, I'm like, balance was always 50-50. And I'm like, well, I don't have balance. Like, I'm not 50-50. I'm not 50% softball and 50% personal life. Like, I'm not. I might be like 95-5. And that's my balance. And that's what makes me feel whole. Like, I might have to have a little bit of every once in a while, I have some me time and, do something that fills my cup, but my cup gets filled from what I'm doing and what my choices are. So your balance is different than anybody else's balance, but making sure that if you want something, to be a go-getter and go after it and don't let anything stand in your way.
I love that you brought up what fills your cup essentially and how that's different for every person, because I remember I had Peyton St. George on the show from Duke, and she talked about how they could all have one mental health day off, and most people would take that and they would spend it away from the softball field, away from the weight room, right? Just to get kind of some space and clarity. But for her, what filled her cup is she still wanted to go lift that day. She didn't want to take that part of it off because it did fill her cup. And people do have their different ways of being able to do that. Nobody's the same. So I like that you brought that up, because we talk about like, oh, don't be a workaholic, make sure you have that balance a lot, like you said, but it's about like making sure that your cup is full. So however that happens is how it happens. I really like that point.
Yeah. And everybody's different. Like, I might have an off day, but you know what? On my off day, I just want to sit at home, maybe with my laptop on my lap and filtering out my emails so then I can get down as close to one as possible. Like, that might be what I need that day. And another day, what I might need is to listen to a podcast while I'm getting my nails done. Like, everything's going to be different, but I have to know what my why is to be able to fulfill what my needs are. And it's the same thing with my team. Like, they have to know what their why is, so then they know what they're working towards and what is going to fulfill them as a collegiate softball player.
Mm. Well, so now I'm going to tell everybody that you listen to Bleav in Softball while you're getting your nails done. That's the story.
Go for it. Yes.
That's going to be the story out there. Well, I see, this is another thing too. My dad has actually for a while been like, you need to have Mizzou's coach. You got to have Larissa on, like, because he really likes watching you. Ever since I stopped playing, he still watches, and since then has really loved just seeing you, the way that you coach. I was like, what is it that you like so much about her? And he said, you're passionate. That's obvious, right? We're talking about that. Competitive and no BS. And that is something that I'm getting. And because I take that as a positive thing too, especially when we're talking about what women and girls can learn from sports, for life, not even just career, but for life. When hard things happen, that's really what helps you get through, in my opinion. So he's thrilled that we're doing this, by the way.
Well, that's great. I'm glad he is a fan. And, and I don't know if it's my upbringing. I say I'm very New York, and New York is very, very direct. And, and at the same time, like, I'm not trying to fool anybody. And again, like, I am who I am.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to play for me. Not everybody can play for me. And I want to be surrounded by people that want to be a part of what we're doing and believe in what I believe in. And I'll be respectful to when people make other choices. And again, it's not personal. Like, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And I want every single softball player to be happy in what their decision is. So if I have a recruit in and they say, you know what, coach, this isn't the best place for me, I'm probably feeling the same exact thing and going, yeah, you're right. I don't think it's going to be a good fit. And that's okay. And I want them to know that it's okay, because I want them to be able to reach their highest level of success in whatever it is that they're doing and to be happy while they're doing it. And when I hear that people transfer because they're not happy, one, I wonder if they even know what happiness is. Like, that's my first thing. And I always say all the time, like, if a kid just says, well, I'm not happy, I'm like, well, what would make you happy? And when they say, I don't know, then I'm like, then you don't really know what you're searching for.
Right.
And I was happy too when I was living at home and my mom was making me breakfast every single morning. So it's figuring out what is your your true happiness, and then finding someone that can fill those needs and finding a program that can fill those needs, because everybody is different. And if you have that competitive spirit and that competitive nature where you have to win, then you have to find a program that's going to fill that. And it really is, to me, it's so simple, but you have to do the work on the front end to know what you're looking for and to find someone that's going to meet those needs.
The self-awareness, the self-work. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? No matter what.
It does. It does, and you know, and it starts at a very young age to like when I chose to go to Gannon. And again, Gannon's not a t-shirt school. It's not a big conference. It's a very small private Catholic school in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I was 6.5, 7 hours away from there. And I had two needs. I wanted to play softball all 4 years school, 4 years, and I wanted to be a physical therapist. Like those were my two priorities. So let's find a school that I can play softball for 4 years, that I didn't have to do an internship in my senior year, that I didn't have to do these field placements. Like softball, I wanted to play for 4 years, but I also wanted to graduate with my degree in physical therapy. So, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't further than 8 hours from home. So, there I narrowed it down to find what met those needs. And now I can be able to fill that cup to be able to meet my needs. So then I was very satisfied with my collegiate career because it was exactly what I was looking for. And it led me obviously to the path I'm in right now, but I knew what I wanted and I knew what I needed. So it's finding out those pieces to be able to put them into place to get what you want out of what your experience is.
Yes. See, that's why I like to put that information in your intro. Like I said, you're a Gannon alum because that is part of your path. Obviously, we all see you on TV and postseason and SEC and all this stuff now, but like part of your path that led you to this point, those were some crucial years as well. And you're an example of, you're not just telling kids, hey, figure out what you want. You're like, okay, here's what I did. Here's an example of what worked for me. Might be different for you, but this is how I narrowed it down to what I needed.
Yeah. You know, I've given this speech a handful of times because people will ask about my journey, like how did I end up in this chair? And I understand the responsibility that I have being an SEC coach, especially in this conference at this level. Like I get it, but it wasn't easy, and it took some time. And my story is when I grew up in upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains, I was at a very, very small school, very resort town. I graduated 86 kids in my graduating class, like very small. And I was the first fast pitch pitcher in that school district. And we went on and won a state title. But it was when I saw my first fast pitch pitcher, because I was pitching slingshot up until 10th grade. And then I saw someone throwing windmill, and I was like, holy cow, what is she doing with her circle? Like that motion is crazy. Like, what is that? I've never seen that before. And then I immediately went to my high school coach and I was like, I want to learn how to do that. Like, that is so super cool. And I found a camp, and Karen Mullins from UConn was at the camp, and Deb Plazzi at Ithaca, like two Hall of Famers were at the camp. And I learned how to pitch. And then we went on and won a state tournament. And I'm like, you know what? I love softball. Wouldn't it be so cool if someone actually gave me a scholarship and I could play in college? Like, wouldn't that be cool? And I knew I was going to college anyway. But wouldn't it be cool if someone just gave me $1 because they wanted me? Like that was my whole mentality. And then I had an opportunity. I got a scholarship at Gannon. And then it was, wouldn't it be so cool if I could coach college one day? Like I love this sport, and I'm going to be a physical therapist, and that's going to pay the bills, and I'm going to get a paycheck, but I can still coach softball and travel ball or high school and find a way. And then all of a sudden I got a Division II job. And then it went into, wouldn't it be cool if I could coach Division I? And then wouldn't it be cool if I could be a head coach in Division I? And then wouldn't it be cool if I could coach in the Power Five? So it was like all these stepping stones were dreams, but figuring out a way how to be able to reach those dreams and accomplish those things. Because it's not just going to happen. Like, again, you got to be a go getter,
Right.
and you got to know what you're going after and find a way to get things done to go after what it is that you want.
That's huge because you said it. To be a go-getter, you have to know what you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like
Right.
that's been a part for you, though. Each step you've been like, okay, I know what I want next. How do you suggest that people figure it out if they're still trying to figure that out?
To me, it just starts with knowing your why.
Mm.
Like, why are you doing it? Why do you want to do it? And then the what? Like, what do you want out of it? And what are you trying to accomplish? So if you don't have a why, then you don't know, you don't really buy in or believe in what you're fighting for or what you're trying to get or the reason behind. And it could be something as simple as like, I want to do this because I want to make money. Okay, but you have a why. But if you don't have a why, then you're just floating day in and day out without a true purpose. And I want my players to understand what their why is. And some of them could be, I play for the little girl that I grew up, or it was a why because this is my avenue to go to college. Like, so everyone's why is going to be completely different, but you continue to fight for that why.
Mm.
And then you do the what and the how and get people around you that believe in the same things you do.
The word that's coming to mind as you're diving into this is ownership, like taking ownership of yourself, your path, your life. And so I always see you tweeting out and talking about own it. Like that is a motto that is a part of Mizzou softball. Can you explain what that means truly to you at the core?
It's accepting responsibility for who you are and what you do. Like, period. That's it. And it's accepting it as an individual, and it's also accepting it as part of a team, an organization, and a program, and then a university. So we're going to accept responsibility for what we do every single day, for who we are, for what we represent, to how we represent our program and Mizzou, that it's nobody else's responsibility, it's ours. So when we know we're going to screw up, like there's things that are going to happen, we don't blame, we don't point the finger. It's not anybody else's fault. It's our responsibility. So that's where that ownership comes in. And when I talk to the players about like something as simple as getting yourself ready to practice, and we do a team stretch, but it's your responsibility to make sure your body's ready. Like you have to own your body. Like you have to own it to get yourself mentally and physically ready to play. So I don't want a kid to come in and go, you know what, I wasn't warmed up enough. No, that's on you. I don't know what your body needs. Like you know what your body needs. So you need to accept that responsibility. And it's the same thing with studying. Like accept the responsibility that you might have to study twice as much time as your friend who doesn't need a lot of time. Like so when you start to accept that responsibility for yourself, now you're putting the ownership on you, and you're going to elevate your standards even higher to be able to make sure that you're not letting anybody else down or not letting yourself down.
Mm. And a lot of that's hidden, so to speak, in the sense that not everybody is seeing most of that type of work that you're doing. And you always have these great inspirational quotes or just nuggets that you share too on Twitter. And one recently that this is reminding me of is you said, some think you become great on the big stage under the bright lights, but the light only reveals the work you did in the dark. And so what you're talking about a little bit is some of the stuff you do in the dark, right? Like to actually get to that point and earn that at the end.
And you just gave me goosebumps reading that. It's what work are you doing when nobody's watching?
Yeah.
And if you need the pat on the back and you need to tell someone that, hey, I came in to get some extra hitting, or hey, I did this, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And when you're in the bright lights on the big stage, it's going to expose how much you did behind the scenes. Like, were you laying in bed? And I think about Emma Robbie is one that comes to mind. Okay. Emma Robbie is an assistant coach at Omaha. She's one of our Mizzou alums. She played 4 years at Mizzou, had a really strong career. And her freshman year was my first year at Mizzou. And she came up to bat with the bases loaded, and we were playing Georgia, and there was one out, and it was a tie ball game with a game-winning run at third base. As a freshman, she comes up to bat, huge smile across her face, and I knew she was going to get the job done. And at the end of and she did. She got the job done. She had a base hit. We win the ball game. And I went up to her afterwards and I said, what were you feeling in that moment? And she said, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. And that's what she envisioned and the work that she put in to prepare herself to be in that moment. So the work that she did leading up to that and the envisioning and laying in bed saying, you know what, the game's going to be on the line and I'm going to be the one in the batter's box and I can't wait for that opportunity. That's the work that she did in the dark. Mm. That's the work she did without a coach watching to give herself an opportunity to be successful in that moment.
It makes me think of you talking about your path too, where it's, wouldn't it be cool if, for her, it was, wouldn't it be cool if I got to be up in that situation, playing in college with the game on the line. Yeah.
And owning it is be ready when you are called upon.
Yes.
Like that's what owning it is. So you are going to be in that situation. So be ready when you are called upon.
Yeah.
Because that might be your only chance and don't let it pass you by.
Right.
So accepting that responsibility to, I can't wait till it's my chance. I can't wait till I'm called upon. I can't wait until I get that phone call and someone wants to hire me. Yeah. So I better be ready for that phone call.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where the result is, of course, something you want. Like you said, she got the job done. But so much of what you actually talked about was the process and her mindset going into it. And you're like, oh, by the way, also the result was good. You know, so I think about your 5 regionals, 2 super regionals, good results, but like the process is the part where I'm fascinated by, at least.
Sure. I mean, the result is icing on the cake. But her going from the on deck circle with this huge smile looking at me before she stepped in the batter's box, like that's the moment because she wanted to be in that situation. She wanted the ball. She wanted to have the at bat as a freshman for the first time in one of her first SEC weekends to be able to win the game. Versus if the kid stepped up and was fearful and frightened and intimidated, then I'm going to look at it and go, you know what? I'm not preparing her well enough. And she didn't feel confident in that situation. So I got to look at it. And even if she got the hit, she wasn't prepared for that moment. Then it was just luck.
Mm.
And continued success and repeatability isn't luck. That's preparation.
Yes. Well, it makes me think of last season too. I mean, you all were the D1 softball turnaround performance of the year is what we called it. But it was because of, sure, the result that came from it, but really more so the journey of your season last year. And I remember you saying it was a tough season early on, but you said it was the most enjoyable season I've ever coached. And you said it was because everyone was their true version of themselves. That is, to me, really more of the things that make our sport so great, is things like that.
I had so much fun last year. One, because I could trust everybody. Like it comes to that. Like I could trust every single player. I could trust my staff. I knew what I was going to get. I wasn't there. There wasn't uncertainty. I knew that they were giving me everything they had, and that's all a coach ever wants is to know that you're getting the best version of themselves every single day, regardless of what the result is. So yeah, we didn't win. We didn't weren't 66-0. Like we lost games, but I got the best version of them every single day. So I can be satisfied with the result. Not happy, but I could be satisfied with the results because I knew I was getting the most out of them every single day. And winning game or losing game one in regionals, I knew deep down inside that we were going to win that regional. And it really started with them focusing on like we're going to win a doubleheader tomorrow. Like we can do it. We've done it many times. We can win a doubleheader tomorrow. So let's focus on that. And then after we win the doubleheader, like we didn't come this far to lose. So we're going to win another doubleheader tomorrow. And they truly believed in it. And obviously the results happened, but they truly believed that they were going to be able to do it. But all the preparation gives them an opportunity to believe. It's not like we didn't do it before. So it's like the result speaks for itself, but the preparation gave them an opportunity to be able to believe that they were going to do it.
Very, very important preparation, and what that means in different situations, right? There's all types of preparation. Like you said, it's not just taking ground balls, right? There's so many other things like the mentality and the culture that you built, though. Like that doesn't happen without this own it culture that you've built. Because to me, I'm always more impressed by people who get through hard, right? And come out on the other side, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just to overcome something and go straight through something. And I see that in your program, not just last year, but just in the culture in a general sense.
And like right now we haven't started school yet. We don't start classes until next Tuesday. So we've had 2 weeks of 2-a-days. We start 8 o'clock in the morning and we go 8 to 11 and we lift from 11 to 12. We break, we have all of our meals together as a team. We have breakfast together, we have lunch together. Then we have our afternoon session with pitchers throw, and then we're together again from 2:30 until 5:30, and then we have dinner together. So like that's part of what we're doing, and it's explaining to them like we're going to do 2 weeks of 2-a-days because when you get to postseason and you get to the grind, like it's going to be hard. But you know what? When you get to the losers bracket and you have to play a doubleheader, you're going to go, that's a piece of cake because we just did 2 weeks of 2-a-days. Like that's hard. A doubleheader is going to be easy. So it's all that preparation and that buy-in on this is why we work so hard in January because April and May is tough. This is why October is really, really hard because January's hard because May is hard. So if we get really, really good at hard things, then they're not going to be as hard as we think they are. And then you're going to feel so good. Like our last day of 2-a-days, they're going to feel such a moment of accomplishment that they're going to feel really good about what they just accomplished and what they just did. That's going to carry the momentum and the almost like the self-worth on no one else just accomplished what I did, And I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. So then all of a sudden you're empowered and your standard as a team and as an individual is increased because of the work that you just put in.
Mm. I remember having that feeling in college sometimes, even, yeah, after a conditioning test.
Right.
And it seems like a small thing, right? Like in terms of that's not going to get the headlines. Hey, this is the conditioning test that they did in the off season.
Right.
But it was something that as a team, okay, everybody passed, everybody improved from their last whatever timing, whatever the score was at the time for whatever activity. That does build that confidence and that self-worth that you're talking about.
Right. And we do the same thing. Like we'll have a conditioning test when they come back after Christmas break.
Yeah.
And it's not the test. Like it's not the running. Like you don't have to be a marathon runner or a sprinter to pass this test.
Right.
It's about having the discipline, and the test is designed that you have to be when the clock goes and he says go, like you got to be ready to get off the line. And if you're not mentally into that one rep, you're not going to be as successful. And that's what our game is. Like if you're not mentally in on every single pitch, guess what? The ball's going to find you. It's going to eat you up. You're not going to be prepared. And then that's when you end up making mistakes. So the test is designed more for the mental side than it actually is the physical side.
Yes. It's like a Mr. Miyagi thing.
Right, yeah.
We're waxing on and waxing off here.
Right.
It's very true. I'm getting fired up. This is one of my favorite things about doing this show is like, I always come out of these conversations feeling better than I did before I went into them, because I get to have people like you on and we get to talk about the real stuff and just the passionate stuff, not just the X's and O's and all of these different things. Because I think back too, I can see how this is easy to buy in if you're a part of the Mizzou softball program, if you're fit, right? Yeah. But I think back to a hard time, right? When in the athletic department, there was the postseason ban back in 2020 and 0 of your players transferred. 0. In today's day and age of all of these changes that happen seemingly all the time, to me, that was incredibly impressive and spoke a lot to your culture and what you've built.
And thank you, because that is probably one of my most proud coaching moments, because that was my hard.
Yeah.
I took over a program that was under investigation for something that happened 2 years before I was even there. And we didn't have players on the team that were a part of it. The team in 2016 is when the infractions happened. And when I got a phone call from my athletic director at the time, and he said, "You're banned for postseason," immediately I'm like, they're all going to leave. Like, and I would understand, because every kid wants to play in postseason. Like that's why you play, is to go to the show. So I would understand, and I wouldn't have blamed them. But then I'm like, as a coach going, I'm not going to have anybody. Like I'm literally going to have to start all over. Like everybody's going to be gone, or they're going to opt out and they're going to say, you know what, we're not going to do this. And I had to tell the team on a Zoom before COVID even hit and Zoom was even a thing. Yeah. And I had to call them all up on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving and tell them we're banned for postseason, and this is what it means. And these are the parameters of the postseason ban, and you have the right to transfer anywhere you want. And we had a reduction of scholarships, and we had a reduction of recruiting days. And so like that was our hard. And then after Thanksgiving, we had individual meetings with every single player, and the seniors were first. And I'm like, I wouldn't blame them if they said, you know what, I want my senior year to be in postseason. And I'll never forget, our starting catcher came in and she sat down and she said, "There's no way I'm opting out. And I didn't go through all this to watch on the sidelines." And it was at that moment that I was like, they get it. We got them. They get it. They're starting to understand what we're trying to do here. And not a single kid opted out. And it was at that moment that I was like, okay, we are headed in the right direction. Now I know why I was brought here to Mizzou. Like that's when I really realized that this is what they needed from me to be able to get them through this. And our whole mission that year was we're going to prove to the rest of the country that we're one of the top 64 teams and we deserve to go to the postseason. So the postseason tournament's not going to be the best teams in the country. It's going to be the best 63, and you left out Mizzou. So that was kind of like our MO. And we had started off the season, we were 19, I think, and 6 and 3-0 in SEC play before COVID hit and shut down the country. But what was so gratifying to me was when the entire country was shut down and the season stopped, there were so many players and teams that had so many regrets. We didn't, because we played every single game as though it was our last, because we didn't have a postseason. We knew we weren't going to make it. So when our season was ended, it was, you know what? We gave it all we had for 25 games. Like, we were so fulfilled because of what we learned in that moment that it carried over into the 21 season and 22 and 23, so on and so forth, because of what we had to endure.
Yeah. I remember seeing too, I was fired up at the time because I remember seeing you be like, I'm going to bring everyone who was on the team next time we go to the World Series, or when Missouri goes to the World Series, I'm bringing them all because of what they put into this program. And I was like, yes. You want to run through
they
a wall.
deserved it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. They deserved it. So, like, when we go, like, you were a part of the reason why we're going.
Yeah.
Because easily, for a team to go through what we had to go through, it easily could have just destroyed the entire program. And it would have set it back like 5-6 years, because players would have left. It would have been a bad culture. Everyone would have been mad. But because of the own it philosophy, which was before we were even banned from postseason,
Yeah.
like, which is so ironic, like, because of the whole philosophy, it was like, no, like, this isn't anybody's fault. This is just what we have to deal with. We're not going to blame anybody. We're not going to point the fingers. This is just what we have to deal with. So how are we going to deal with it?
Yeah.
And then we figure out a way.
But see, that's the kind of preparation. I think of preparation, how you've talked about it. And not that you can literally prepare for that exact thing to happen. There's no way to prepare for exact things to happen in our lives most of the time. But
Right.
to have the mindset to know that you can tackle whatever it is that's going to happen, all of a sudden you are prepared even for an unprecedented thing to happen, if that makes sense.
Because you're consistent. Because you're consistent in your message.
Yeah.
Because you're consistent in your philosophy. Like, that didn't change just because we were banned from postseason.
Yeah.
That didn't change because we were on probation. Like, our mission doesn't change.
Yeah.
Just some of the parameters that we're given are changing, but it doesn't change what we're doing and why we're doing it. I will say one of the hardest things for me personally is when I was preparing for our preseason, our January of that year, I didn't know what my why was, because my why is always to win. My
Right.
why is always to go to postseason. Like, we're going to win a championship. But when the championship's taken away from you, I had to really figure out, okay, what is my why going to be? Because we're not going to be able to hold up a trophy.
Yeah.
Like, that was out of our control. So I had to kind of rethink on what is my mission going to be as a coach, to my players then believe and buy into what I'm saying.
Right.
So it couldn't be fake, and it couldn't be a facade, and it couldn't be surface level. Like, I had really needed to figure out. So it was kind of like, we're going to overcome adversity. So when we step in the batter's box and we're facing some adversity, then it's not a big deal anymore,
Yeah.
because we've already faced the worst that we possibly could.
Yes. Yes. There are so many times, even to this day, where I'm like, oh, I did that really hard thing in college softball, so I can do this, whatever it is in life. Even now, years later, I'll think back to that sometimes. Or remember when you did that conditioning test when, like, it was really, really hard? Yeah, okay, well, I could do this.
Right.
You know, it
Right.
really is something you can always kind of like lean on when you need to, but you have to put in the work to be able to feel that way.
Right. Yeah. And mine always is, and I just actually told one of my players this, my motto, you can't fake passion is one of them, and be a go-getter. But I have a poster that's in my childhood bedroom that I drew when I was probably in 8th grade. And it says, if it's to be, it's up to me. So it's me taking ownership, which is really kind of ironic and weird at the same time. But it's me taking personal ownership that if I want something to happen, it's my responsibility to make sure. So if it's to be, if something's meant to be, then it's up to me to make sure I get it done. It's not relying on anybody else. So it's making sure if my team is going to be prepared and know how to compete when your prize is taken away, that's up to me. That's up to me to make sure that they understand those things. It's up to me to make sure I'm upholding the philosophy and the culture within the program, not anybody else. So that's my responsibility as the head coach.
Well, that's sort of controlling what you can control, right? There's so many things we can't, obviously, but you can control some things. We can control some things.
I can control I can control making sure that we uphold the standards
Yes.
and that we articulate our standards, and I don't compromise those standards.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's where a lot of programs, coaches, companies get into trouble, is when they alter their standards for convenience,
Mm.
and then they have different standards at different times.
Mm.
But if your standards are consistent and they're always increasing, and it's just always, it's communicating what those standards are, so then there's no gray area.
Right.
Like, they know, and then they know how to uphold them, and then they start upholding them within each other.
Yeah. Well, and this takes me back to your involvement with the NFCA, right? In terms of even being willing to share this externally. A lot of people hold things close to the vest, and certain things you can't. You can't give away all the secrets, right? Of course. And I noticed that at the convention as well, that coaches were trying to help each other, not giving away too much, but trying to also help each other at the end of the day, because you're competing on the field, but then you're also peers off the field and have those relationships. That's always seemed like an interesting balance. You know, when you see someone you compete against so intensely during the season, and then you're kind of chatting them up at the breakfast table, you know, in that sort of setting. That's always interesting to me.
You still have to have the horses.
Yeah.
So I learned, so Bill Edwards was a former football coach, and he used to talk to me all the time on how guys would sit around a table at a bar and draw on a napkin at the bar X's and O's and different plays and different schemes, and they were always sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say, he's like, it's really frustrating that in softball there wasn't enough sharing. This is early on in the early 2000s and late 90s. And so I always took that to heart. Like, it doesn't matter if we share the same thing. One, the players have to believe in it. You have to have the right players to be able to do it. It has to fit within your philosophy and your system. So, like, just because I know how someone runs a first and third play doesn't mean it's going to work for me
Right.
if it doesn't fit in the same pieces in the same box. So we're never ever going to make this game the greatest sport that it is if we don't share. So that's part of my whole philosophy, is like, it's my responsibility as the head coach in the SEC. It's my responsibility as the president of the NFCA to continue to grow this game so that some 10-year-old learns how to play, and then maybe 10, 15 years from then, she's then passing it on to somebody else. And that's why our game is going to continue to grow if people continue to do that. Men's fast pitch died out because they weren't passing the game on. The dads weren't teaching their sons how to pitch. So then the game didn't take off the way women's fast pitch has. So we have to make sure that we continue to, now that I'm in Missouri, I can say replant the crop, you know, so that it continues to grow. Because if we don't replant the crop dies.
Yeah.
And then our game will die.
So there's another layer to your why, right? Like, you're talking about winning, of course, as a coach, but then there's this like bigger picture aspect where there's another side to your why too, which is about the game as a whole.
Absolutely. I mean, we got to take care of the game. And the game has given me so much. Like, I owe the game my entire life. Like, without the game, I wouldn't be where I am right now. I wouldn't be as fortunate I am, and I wouldn't be in this opportunity. So it's my responsibility to take care of the game. Because if I don't, then why would anybody else? And I'm not saying that that's the power I have, but why am I any different?
Yeah.
So I need to, again, if it's to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that I'm doing those things so then other people will follow. Or I can't hold them to a certain standard if I'm not living up to that standard as well.
That was another one that I saw recently on your Twitter. You said you can't lead what you don't live, be the standard. And that's come up obviously as a theme throughout this whole conversation, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I had my high school coach talk to our team a few years ago. She lives down in Florida right now. And she had said something to the team completely unsolicited. And she said, there isn't anything that your coach wouldn't ask you to do that she hasn't already done herself. And it gave me a lot of reflection back, like to make sure, like, I needed to do some checks and balances to make sure, am I asking for anything that's out of the ordinary and ridiculous? But it's always at the same time, if my players see my work ethic, then they're going to follow. And if they see my passion, they're going to follow, and my attention to detail. So my team's always going to be a reflection of me.
Yes, that's right. Well, when it comes to the future of the game, of your program, what are you looking forward to the most this year and maybe even beyond for softball?
And even take it away from our program, I think the excitement behind Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC is real exciting. Like, I think it's so great for our conference. Unfortunately, I'm going to say, fortunately, that we have both of those opponents playing in our place. Like, I know our fan base is real excited because you take Mizzou, used to be in the Big 12 and the Big 8. Like, this is huge for our university and our community. Going back to playing Oklahoma, playing Texas the way that we did, especially Oklahoma. Like, the stories that I hear about Oklahoma back in the Big 8, I mean, a lot of rich tradition and history. And obviously, we know the success that Oklahoma's had. But to have both those teams come into Columbia is going to be real exciting. So I'm enthusiastically excited for that opportunity. I think it's great for our conference. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how the season progresses. But what I'm most excited about, I have 10 first-year players within our program, 7 freshmen. And I absolutely love teaching this game. And we've had some staff changes. And I would say for the past 3 years, I've kind of been a manager, like a big league manager, and just kind of overseen. I'm not in the trenches. I wasn't in the trenches. Now I'm in the trenches. And I have never enjoyed teaching more than I am right now, because I'm sweating. I'm hitting ground balls. I'm on my hands and my knees, rolling ground balls, like back to what I did as an assistant. And my players are just enjoying every second of it. Like, they can see how much fun I'm having. So now, how can you not have fun to practice every single day when your head coach is, sweating her butt off, hitting ground balls and throwing balls all like I throw every single morning at 7:30 with one of our infielders every morning. Like, we're playing catch. And this is not something that I've done in the 7 years that I've been here at Mizzou, because of the role that I was filling. And now being able to be in the trenches and actually get back to teaching the intricacies of the game, it's just been so enjoyable. And having 7 freshmen has made it even that much more worthwhile.
It must even just be cathartic, too, getting to be physical like that again. Because I've thought about it before. What a blessing for us in our sport. We can release stress by throwing things and hitting things, right? Like, how lucky are we that that's what we get to do?
Yeah, except my hands aren't used to it because I got calluses and blisters. So I got to wear some batting gloves every once in a while. But, I mean, just to get back to it, like, I fell in love with this game maybe 40 years ago. And so I just dated myself. But, being able to have that same passion that I had then, and being able to share it with great players and great people is really, truly a blessing.
Yeah, that young girl who was throwing the slingshot, look at her now.
Yep. Right, exactly. She'd be pretty excited for me.
Wouldn't it be cool if all these things happened? Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be so cool if I got to coach at Mizzou?
Awesome. I could keep talking to you forever. I kind of want to, but I'll respect your time if I have to. But I do play, before we wrap up, just a quick game with every guest that comes on. It's called Safe or Out. So I'll bring up a topic, softball related, and if you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe. If not, then you call it out. Okay. First one is, we touched on this topic, but now just straight up asking, transfer portal, safe or out?
Safe. And I'm if I can elaborate a little bit, I have my reasons why. I think it's great that everything's out in the open, because before the portal, there was it was about who you knew. It was about, everything was, because there wasn't an opportunity for you to know who was available. So I like the fact that everything's available. So I like the portal. I don't like what the portal's done to families and to recruits, because they think it's an easy way out. But I like the idea of the portal.
The transparency. I get it.
Yes. Yep. The transparency. And I think there's been a lot of players that felt like they were stuck in schools that might have not been a great fit because they didn't have an opportunity to be able to go somewhere. And again, like, you have 4 years to be able to make the most of your opportunity. And I want players to feel like they have an opportunity to be able to do so.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Next one is bat flips. Safe or out?
Time and place. Safe. Time and place. Losing by 5, nope, you don't deserve a bat flip. Walk-off home run, you can bat flip.
Are you one of those people too where it's like, if you're fired up with your team, totally cool, but if you're kind of like taunting the other team, not so much?
I don't want my team to even come out of the dugout to celebrate a home run unless we're winning. If it was we got to either tie the game or we got to be winning. Don't come out and celebrate a home run and we're down by 4.
Right.
We got 3 more runs to get. So it's, again, time and place and understanding and respecting the game, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like, I'm not going to celebrate. I'm not going to be chest bumping anybody and down 4.
right.
It's like, good. Okay, you got us one more closer.
Right. Like, you're all about passion, but like funneled with competitiveness as well.
Yes.
Like, I think, who was it? Was it Cassidy a couple of years ago where there was that play at the wall and there was the review and she had her Gatorade cup and she like crushed it afterwards or something because she was so upset. Like, I was here for that though. I was like, I love that. Like, she cares. She's invested, I respected it.
Exactly.
Well, thanks again, Coach. This was awesome. I'm so glad, again, for years now, my dad's been wanting us to do this. That's not the reason I did it, but it was certainly a plus that I get to tell him now that we have.
That's cool.
And I'm going to...
Tell your dad I said hi.
I will. He'll love that. He'll love that. And I'm going to be in Clearwater, so I'm going to see you there as well.
Okay. We'll see you then.
Awesome. I'm just thrilled to have had Larissa on the show. And I know my dad is too. We all know that now. It's just incredibly interesting, though, to hear her perspective as somebody who makes an impact on the players, on staff, on other coaches, and just the softball community as a whole. It's just a great note to start on, and I hope you're as excited for the rest of this year as much as I am. So with that, let's bring it home. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network and presented by BetOnline. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review. Follow us on X and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. Again, that's BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on X at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.